This is episode 6 of I Finally Saw, where today I finally saw Pride and Prejudice. Well, hello and welcome everybody to another episode here. I'm pretty excited for this one. We have, of course, once again, I am joined by Andromeda.
Hi, everybody.
And then we also have a couple of new faces. So we also have Alexandra.
Hi.
And then we also have Liz.
Hey there.
So just a really quick question, and I'll start with Alexandra on this one. So just to kind of quickly get to know us, what is one movie, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your favorite movie, but what is one movie right now that you feel like you can just kind of endlessly watch over and over again?
Oh, God. My go-to answer for this, and it's probably very common with everyone, but is always Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That is a movie I can put on at any given moment, and I'll just be able to have such a good time.
That's great. That's a good answer. Liz, what about you?
So I just rewatched it, but I'm absolutely obsessed with Titane. It is one of my favorite movies of all time, and I could watch it over and over again and get something new out of it every single time.
I'll keep that one in mind.
Oh, please do.
Not so subtle foreshadowing. But so today we are talking about specifically the 2005 movie adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, which actually turns 20 this year. And in no small part to that anniversary did this come across my radar. And I figured, now seemed like an appropriate time because I had actually never seen it before, but we'll get more into that. First, just sort of to introduce this movie, I want to read a little snippet that I stole from Google because I'm too lazy to write something myself. In this adaptation of Jane Austen's beloved novel, Elizabeth Bennet, portrayed by Keira Knightley, lives with her mother, father, and sisters in the English countryside. As the eldest... Wait, I'm sorry. Is she? I thought she was the second eldest. I hate to interrupt myself.
That's what it is.
Google is wrong.
I can't believe this.
She faces mounting pressure from her parents to marry. When the outspoken Elizabeth is introduced to the handsome and upper-class Mr. Darcy, portrayed by Matthew Macfadyen, sparks fly. And although there is obvious chemistry between the two, Darcy's overly reserved nature threatens the fledgling relationship. Overly reserved nature, I think, is certainly one way to put it.
In an era when marrying a rich man was the most a woman could hope for, Elizabeth Bennet was way ahead of her time.
So right now then, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and transition into our sort of familiarity with both this movie and maybe even a little bit by extension with the original book. So I'd like to start with Andromeda. Andromeda, what is your familiarity with this?
I feel like it's kind of like everyone else in that we all know it's probably the novel that kind of kicked off rom-coms for modern cinema today. But beyond that, she's just an author that's created so many stories, like Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, a lot of other things. But really my familiarity started with the 20th anniversary, which you mentioned, and I was lucky enough to catch it in theaters, so I went to watch it for the first time. And I was completely alone in the theater, so it was interesting just being reclined back, watching it on my own, and I enjoyed it. My issue is that I couldn't hear really anything they're saying, which is really hard because they're speaking in older English, so I just take some time to process what they're saying. But on rewatching for the podcast, I realized I enjoyed it more the second time.
Nice. So Liz, what about you?
Yeah. So similar to Andromeda, I saw this movie for the first time for the 20th anniversary in theaters, and I would not have seen it if it wasn't for a friend of mine who encouraged me to go see it in theaters with him. And I loved it a lot more than I thought I would. I'm not into period pieces normally, but it was really cool to see all the outfits and the shots of the prairies and hear the accents. And it was just very charming. It was a very charming movie. I did try to read the original Pride and Prejudice book back when I was in high school and could not get through it. The writing is just very, very, very dense, and it's written in that older-ish kind of English, and makes it really hard to get into the actual story if you can't really understand what is being written to begin with. And I will also mention I'm a big fan of Bridget Jones's Diary, which was heavily inspired by Pride and Prejudice, and is probably the only reason that I actually went to see the movie at all.
So, Alexandra, we had briefly spoken before we started recording, and I think you had mentioned that although this is the first time you've seen this version of the story, I believe you have, shall we say, some familiarity with the story as a whole. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I do. My senior year of high school, our senior play was Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, wow.
So I was in that. I was Charlotte Lucas in that, and Dayton, who's on the show, was also in that play.
Ooh.
So that was very fun. So that was actually my first exposure to the script. It was just an adaptation that our teacher did, basically a combination of like 2005 and just some quotes from the book. So that's where I originally know it from. But the first time I've seen the 2005 one was a few hours ago.
So speaking for myself, this is not the first time I have seen a Pride and Prejudice movie. I know a little bit about Jane Austen's work because we did a unit on her way back in high school, and I was actually supposed to read, I think it was Sense and Sensibility, and unfortunately I had too much going on in my life, and so I didn't get around to it. I had to spark notes the book, and I ended up getting an A- on the paper, which wrecked my faith in the education system, but that's a whole other story. The point is that my girlfriend actually is a pretty big Jane Austen fan, to my understanding, and specifically I think of this movie and the like, and she's not really a horror person, but I think she knows that I am, and so she really wanted me to watch, and she hadn't seen it either, but she really wanted to show me this one specific adaptation that some of you may have heard of called Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which was an experience. I ironically enough, or funny enough, I don't know what the word is, but funny enough, my least favorite part of that movie was the zombies. I was like, the Pride and Prejudice stuff is not to be like, I don't know what the word is, a contrarian or whatever, but I was like, the zombie stuff is just kind of there.
Can I bring up a non sequitur really fast?
Yes, please do.
We were talking about that movie in preparation for this episode,
Okay.
and I mentioned that the original script for Pride and Prejudice and Zombies is allegedly the exact same. Like, everything is, like, almost to a T the same script. All they did was add zombies, and it, like, somehow still worked.
Okay. Well, that's fascinating, because when I saw... this is the first time I had seen the 2005 version, and I kid you not, for like the first 15 minutes of this movie, I was like, wait, have I seen this movie before? Or was the script for Zombies just that one to... There were so many times in this movie, and the problem is that like that spoilers for Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, but that movie ends with like a big duel between... I almost called him Mr. Dreyfus, Mr. Darcy, and his former best friend. There's like a duel to the death that happens. There's like this whole thing about closing off the bridge to London or something because there's a zombie horde incoming. So I was like, for the last act of this movie, I was like, are they gonna fight? I don't remember. I have no idea if that's like a thing that they made up or not. And it wasn't. There's also just this one scene where Darcy and Elizabeth have an argument, and in Zombies they translate that by also just having them beat the crap out of each other while that argument is happening. It is a wild, like, I mean, they're not like trading blows, but they're holding knives to each other and tearing the curtains. And I'm like, I don't know is this supposed to be like this? So needless to say, there was a lot of deja vu and a lot of like, oh, okay, so that wasn't in this movie. But yeah, so that was my sort of familiarity with it.
From Jane Austen, the beloved author of Emma and Sense and Sensibility.
That is Mr. Darcy.
He looks miserable, poor soul.
Miserable he may be, but poor he most certainly is not.
I guess now we'll just sort of go ahead and translate to our broad sort of thoughts on this adaptation of it. Alexandra, I'm curious, as someone who has some sort of familiarity with it, I'm curious what your thoughts on this movie are.
I mean, I really loved it to start off. I'm a hopeless romantic at heart. I love this kind of stuff. I can't help it. I went in knowing I was gonna love it because I loved what I had studied for months and had ended up performing, but I was really taken away the most by the cinematography personally. Just so many pretty shots. I just couldn't stop looking at it. And I really love how they use depth in a lot of shots. I noticed so many times just Elizabeth in the foreground and a bunch of happening in the background. And it just happened over and over so many times that I was like, okay, yeah, this is really cool, and I know what they're going for here. But I don't mind that they're doing it over and over again, because it's great. Story-wise, it's the same old story, and it's still as good as ever. The chemistry between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, amazing. I love it. And yeah.
There's this one moment was like, I put my hand on my mouth when I saw it, and it's the moment where she's getting on the carriage. It's the most, and he thinks he's so slick, he helps her up on the carriage, and they get that extreme close-up on the two hands, and they literally show his hand, like, tensing. Like, bro's already reminiscing about it, and it just happened. And I was like,
he's a yearner.
It's the Victorian era equivalent of, I'll never wash this hand again.
Liz, then, like, how do you feel about this movie?
I really enjoyed it. I don't have a lot of experience with romance movies. I'm a horror movie person through and through. I don't particularly love rom-coms, but I love Keira Knightley. I love Donald Sutherland, and I thought there were a lot of amazing performances in this movie. There's a lot of tension that goes on between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, which is one of the reasons why I think this movie is so popular with a female audience. There's a lot of romantic and sexual tension between the two, which is absolutely palpable in every scene that they share together, even the ones where they're absolutely insulting the heck out of each other, which is wonderful. I love the continuous shot through the house at the party. I thought that was really freaking cool. And I think sometimes the shots can be inconsistent in that way, where you will have these weird close-ups of people's faces that are almost nauseating and then have really cool concepts like that, which is one of the reasons I think this movie is not elevated to that perfect status in my mind, but really, really solid all around. It feels grounded but almost fantastical at the same point, and you can understand the characters, but they still feel larger than life.
Yeah, something that is interesting you bring up as well. I was also thinking about the cinematography, and there's especially I remember in sort of the opening party scene already. I kind of remembered that they're shooting a lot on really long lenses, where you have. And I was always sort of struck by just like how often there's just so much stuff in frame, and we are very frequently not getting just a clean look at our characters' faces. There's like other people in between us and them, or they're between like windows, or there's like the one shot I think of is there's one shot where we're supposed to be getting like a shot of it's literally just a shot of Elizabeth smiling in her house, but they have this really interesting decision to have the two sisters that are like just hugging each other and giggling and spinning, and it's like in between each of the two sisters you get that little glimpse of her smiling, and so there's a lot of that of as well, where you have a lot of stuff in the foreground between our characters. There's a lot of really impressive oneers in this movie that we've talked about oneers before, and how they're oftentimes used in I feel like more often than not I see them talked about in an action context, and I think this is also kind of up there for me. The one I think about, there's two I think about, which is the one at the party where we're just sort of kind of going back and forth and checking in on what everybody's doing, and the other one is, if I remember correctly, there's like one right at the beginning of the movie when I think it's when Elizabeth comes home. She's like coming home, and we're just going through the house, just seeing what the heck everybody's doing. And there's quite a few of just that, and it's really always really impressive, and just a joy to kind of see.
I think I just have the unpopular opinion here, because I know that a lot of people see Jane Austen's work, specifically Pride and Prejudice, as one of the most romantic novels of all time. And in addition to that, it's like people's first gateway into things like the enemies to lovers trope. And I mean, I have thoughts on that as well, but keeping the film general, I feel like I just wasn't super convinced of their love story, to be honest with you. I can't really explain what it is that well, but a lot of people really resonate with like the hand flexing scene. Like, that's literally the scene everyone talks about after watching this movie. To me, I just like I feel like I need more to believe the love story between those two. And I think upon almost third rewatch and really like getting to know these characters after all this time, like I'm more convinced, but that's kind of why I don't see this movie as a masterpiece. But I also understand why people are so like, why it's such a comfort movie for people, because it still is very romantic. It still is so, I don't even know what the word is, just emotional. Like, you can really feel love for everyone, even beyond Darcy and Elizabeth. You can feel it between all five of the sisters and the friends and then the rest of the family. It feels very modern in that way. I think I'm in the unpopular opinion of I'm not entirely on board with their love story as a whole.
Dang. You're just not a yearner like me, for real. I guess I've already sort of hinted at it in the discussion of this, but I really liked this movie, and I don't know, there's so many, it's just one of those movies where I think like every aspect of it really works for me. There's so many shots that are really beautiful to sort of look at. There's that scene where, I mean, I think we literally talked about it in film school, as I'm pretty sure it's the shot where he's just walking. And to the point when that shot showed up, I was like, oh, there it is. Because I think we literally talked about that in a lecture in film school. I remember there's the shot, and then like immediately after that where they press their heads together and it's golden hour and the sun's like right there, and I'm like, oh my goodness. Like, I sincerely hope that everybody cheered like crazy when they got the dailies back on that one, because wonderful. And then like, there's just, I don't know what it is, but the performances as well, especially between, you know, our two sort of central characters, but even outside of that, you mentioned that like you really do feel the love in the family and in that household, and it reminds me a lot of Gerwig's Little Women, where that's especially in the flashback scenes in that movie. There's like all of the sisters like running around and sort of bubbling, and there's like a sort of like it makes it demystifies for a period piece. It feels so relatable, and it demystifies an era that I think we kind of associate with like, oh, very prim and proper, and people don't emote, and everybody's like very stoic, and there's only one person talking at a time or whatever. And it's like it very much sort of demystifies that idea, and it makes it into like, like people, we're people always. And I sort of see myself in Darcy. I think I've had a lot of experiences in my life where I have just, especially when I'm meeting people for the first time, they're like, you're very stoic, you're very cold, you're very shut off from people, you're quiet, basically. And it's always a sort of thing of just kind of like, I don't know, like people sort of can take that the wrong way, I guess. And I understand that. I mean, there's a line I think of when Darcy first sort of is introduced, and Elizabeth asks him, do you dance? And I don't remember the exact line, but it's like, not if I can avoid it. It's something to that effect. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know. I saw that and I was like, dang, that's me for real. Like, I like people watching, and I like just sort of sitting there, and I don't always emote big, and I think for that,
from the director's point of view, because Joe Wright, the director, he didn't want to cast the leads in it. He didn't want Keira Knightley or Matthew Macfadyen to be cast. Well, he didn't want them cast for the reason that Knightley was considered like too attractive to play Elizabeth, because she's in the book, she's so headstrong and very tomboyish, and he was like, I think Keira Knightley's just too attractive for the role, like I don't see it. But then for Mr. Darcy, Macfadyen was worried that he was too unattractive for the role. But I feel like both of the characters are honestly like perfect. Like, I love that Keira Knightley doesn't have veneers, she has really crooked teeth, and it just adds to the like humanity of her character. Like, you can really see yourself as these characters, and it's, I think, in part also just Jane Austen's work. Like, it's really just magic to see these stories that have been around for centuries at this point still being relevant and see, like, shown through today in cinema.
Oh my goodness, I wish I wrote it down. I don't have... Does anyone know the actress who played the mother to the Bennett family? I don't have that on hand, but I want to shout her out because she was amazing. And the scene I always think of, the scene I think of in sort of reference to that is the one where she's like on the bed, like she's supposedly sick or something, and then she's like, oh my goodness, like I don't know how much longer I can last. And then she gets word of the good news, and immediately she's like up and at 'em, and she's just like, oh, we gotta get ready, and it's just like, it's great. What an icon.
I will say, this cast has some of the most British names possible. When I was looking through on Letterboxd. Tallulah Riley, Jenna Malone, Carey Mulligan.
Oh my goodness.
Brenda Lethen, whatever. Rosamund Pike, of course. But then you get to, like, Tom Hollander, Rupert Friend. Like, these are incredibly British. Perfect job casting, because I couldn't think of anyone else who could play people like that other than authentic, weirdly named Brits for the
Homegrown.
time period.
I mean, I touched on it a little before, but the continuous shot through the house at the party is just a really great way to characterize all of the characters who are there at that moment, because we spend time with what's the name of the daughter who's playing piano? Mary and Mr. Bennett telling her to stop playing piano so the other girls can have a chance because she's not very good at it. And going to Elizabeth talking to her friend and seeing some of the characters dance and seeing what the characters are doing in the background and hearing Mrs. Bennett talk about how, oh, Mr. Bingley and Jane they're this close to married right before finding out the news that Mr. Bingley is dropping her. But it's a great way to characterize everyone and sum up just in short little bursts who all of these people are, and is a great way moving into the second and third acts, just to make sure everyone's summed up and have a frame of reference for where they're going with their character arcs for the next hour and a half of the movie.
Now that I'm thinking about it, the scene where we first meet Mr. Wickham, where we have the handkerchief that Lydia drops into the bunch of soldiers and no one picks it up and she's really disappointed about that, but then later on the handkerchief flies over and Wickham picks it up and tries to give it to Elizabeth. So it's like the two love interests for him having that weird connection. I really loved that. And also another scene I want to touch on is in that the big party with the dances, both with what's his face, the guy who she turns down, her cousin.
Oh, Mr.
Collins.
Mr. Collins.
Mr. Collins, yeah. And when they're dancing, him trying to talk to her over and over again, but them just keep getting interrupted by the dance and moving elsewhere. And also Jane trying to talk to her and all of that information happening and her getting overwhelmed. And then in contrast to when she dances with Mr. Darcy and they're also having a conversation, however stilted, but when they do it, it's kind of fun and sexy and there's tension. And so it's just a good way of showing the differences between Mr. Collins and Mr. Darcy. I loved that device.
It's also interesting because Mr. Darcy does ask her, why do you talk so much when you're dancing?
Yeah.
And seems very annoyed by it at the time. Like, we're dancing, you shouldn't be yapping to me while we're trying to get our groove on.
Also, I feel like it's weird that Collins is her cousin, and obviously at a different time, but still, I feel like it's weird.
What was up with Mr. Collins' haircut? Was that like... I don't know if that's mean to say. I was just kind of like, what's going on here?
Yeah, like cropped in the front, and there was like kind of a mullet situation almost happening in the back. It was so weird. I
don't know.
Mr. Collins reminds me of a lot of people we went to film school with.
Oh man. Yeah, there was that scene that really made me be like, oh, which was, what is it? It's where he proposes to Elizabeth. And she's like trying to initially kind of let him down easy, and then he literally like vocalizes his entire thought process where he's just kind of like, well, the only reason you would turn me down is because you're playing a game, obviously. And
but
I was
then
just
the
kind of like,
flower, he was
oh, the little he's just like looming over her
on it the entire time, and he sets it in front of her. And I was sent into the stratosphere when I watched that in theaters. I was like cringing so much.
It was the moment seeing it in theaters that got the biggest laugh out of the audience, was him setting a flower in front of her.
Because it's just one. It's just this little... Was he just very selective?
It's like a wildflower.
Yeah. I don't know.
He doesn't know how to
burn. But there's that, but then like another, like speaking of just like the romance of it, like literally the scene that most sort of embodies it to me, of just kind of like My goodness, you're kind of making me blush a little bit. Is literally the ending. The ending to the movie when it's just kind of like they're just sprawled out on like this like stone bench that like I don't even know. It's like the bench that the Sigourney Weaver and Rick Moranis are on in Ghostbusters, and they're just sprawled out on there. There's all of these fires going. It's like the ultimate candlelight. And they're having this. It's just a cover, and it's just the beauty of showcasing the power of implication and simplicity, because it's just kind of like what is it? They're going through the nicknames, and it's quickly become one of my favorite exchanges I've seen in anything ever, which is just like she says to only call her Mr. Darcy when he's incredibly happy, and then of course he immediately responds with. Only call me Mrs. Darcy if you were feeling incredibly happy. And immediately he responds with, well, how are you doing tonight, Mrs. Darcy? And then he gives her a peck on the forehead. And I was like, oh my goodness. This is incredible.
On that quote, I actually, I'll read everyone the full quote for it. So she says, "You can only call me Mrs. Darcy when you are completely and perfectly and incandescently happy." And then Mr. Darcy says, "And how are you doing this evening, Mrs. Darcy?" And it just makes you want to put your hands to your face and then kick your feet out.
Makes me want to troll my hair a little bit.
Fun fact about that scene. It actually was not available in the UK releases. It just ends right after her father gives his approval. And the movie also ends right there on the YouTube version, which I watched. So I did not get to see that scene.
Really?
What?
Yep.
I will not stand for this injustice. I'm going to march over to the UK
actually.
right now and give them a piece of my mind.
I have no idea why.
They couldn't handle it. They would have been like, oh, heavens.
They understood the power that scene had on everyone.
I mean, they went crazy for the Beatles, so who knows what would have happened, you know? There's another... I remember earlier we talked about how this feels like the skeleton to a lot of what has kind of come to be known as rom-com. I don't know, tropes. I guess tropes is a good word for it. Just the vibes and the general things that you kind of come to expect with the genre. And I didn't get a chance to really sort of look into this for myself, but when I was watching this, my girlfriend brought up something that I thought was really interesting, which is that this book introduces something that is now a sort of really common scene that we see in a lot of rom-com stories, which is, she called it the groveling scene, which is this moment where Mr. Darcy kind of approaches and is like, I have to apologize for the way I've behaved, and he puts his feelings in this very sort of in a box where he is presenting a choice to her, but he's not putting the onus on her, I guess, if that makes sense. Where he's saying, like, this is, I have to apologize, I have to reassert that this is how I feel, but I also want you to understand that, like, you are not under, like, any obligation to reciprocate that, and if you don't want me to, I'll never, like, contact you again. And I can't think of any examples necessarily off the top of my head, but yeah, that does very much feel like something that sort of like pops out. It feels kind of almost sort of reminiscent. It feels like an 1800s version of standing outside with the boombox almost with the boombox over your head. So I was curious. I don't know if you guys had any other sort of things that you'd sort of looked at. And it can be sort of more general rather than anything sort of specific. But is there anything that you sort of see here that you're like, I kind of see the beginnings of what we kind of go on to recognize as like rom-com nomenclature or something?
A love triangle is absolutely a big part Pride and Prejudice, the push and pull between her and Wickham and Darcy, um, that has blown up and gone crazy. Things like Twilight, I'm sure, have taken direct inspiration from the love triangle in Pride and Prejudice.
We should. Oh my goodness, we should talk about Twilight on this show one day. I would love to do that. I think, well, for me personally, it's also just, unfortunately, I haven't paid my dues proper, and I think there's a lot of classic sort of rom-coms that I still haven't actually properly gotten around to seeing. But yeah, it felt, I don't know if you guys kind of agree with this statement, but like for a movie that is in like a time place, like, 200 years ago, there are aspects of it that do immediately sort of feel so universal and still incredibly relatable. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, that is a sort of universal thing that I feel like this movie shows off really well, is a movie that allows girls and women to have sort of girlish joy and whimsy, and shows that wholeheartedly and upfront. I feel like a lot of movies have female characters that hide their emotions in order to be stoic and strong, or female characters that only talk about men. Movies that absolutely do not pass the Bechdel test. But this is one of those movies where there are scenes with multiple women where they just giggle and laugh and experience female joy in a way that not a lot of movies show. It's really interesting because when I was writing down quick notes for this, the only other movie that I could think about that showed that level of female joy was the Japanese movie House from 1979, which is a really weird line to draw, but also just full of girlish whimsy, at least for the first half hour. And it feels like a very universal experience that I know I have with my female friends, where when we are alone without any men present, there's just this giddiness that overtakes us, and this freedom of expression that we get that we cannot fully express around men.
What is it, do you think, about this movie that especially really makes it resonate with women?
I think it's similar to what Liz said about, like, it's just something you don't see in modern movies of women just being women. Like, there are very few movies I could name off the top of my head where it's just women talking, and there aren't any men present. It's just the two of them in their bedroom talking, like, even beyond men, like their love interests, but they're just talking and they're just living. I think that's something that resonates, and obviously, like, it's a romantic story, which I feel like more or less would lend itself to a female audience. But I mean, to be honest, I don't know. I think any person, like, could watch it and would enjoy watching it. My dad actually told me the other day that he gets shy when he talks about it, is the word he used, but he said he started reading romance novels. And I said, Dad, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's completely valid. If you enjoy the story, you should not have to shy away from watching a good movie or reading a good book about women and love and family.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, speaking for myself, I love a good love story, and seeing it now is, yeah, this is one of the all-timers for me personally.
Yeah, I think a lot of I mean, mainly speaking for me, but also I think for a lot of women as a whole, looking at Elizabeth specifically, there is a lot of power placed in her hands, which is very rare to see in like period pieces specifically, but also still rare to see in the rom-com genre. Because like even when there's love triangles or things, it's always like the two men fighting over the woman or something. Elizabeth in this, she gets the power to reject not one but two men. She gets the power to pursue Wickham and to then back off from Wickham, and she gets the power to eventually fall in love with Darcy for herself without him actively like forcing himself on her. No one actively forces themselves on her other than to an extent Mr. Collins with his proposal and refusing to see her rejection, but that's the only really like moment of that. Elizabeth is, she's flawed, she's very headstrong, she's compelling, she's just a wonderful protagonist, and she's not the only good female character, because Jane Austen is a woman who knows how to write women. You don't just look at Elizabeth and it would be so easy for her to put other female characters down. Like, and she does on occasion, she points out like Lydia and Kitty's flaws and all of that. But she's not being like, oh, I'm better than all the rest of you because I'm waiting for my true love, like with Charlotte. Even though she has the moment of, why are you marrying Mr. Collins? He's terrible. She doesn't judge Charlotte too harshly for making that choice, and she still retains that friendship. And she's very supportive of Jane's relationship. It's very much a girls support girls movie, and it's really nice to see.
And none of that, what's the word? What's the phrase? I'm not like other girls.
Yeah.
I have.
It would be very easy to turn her into that. And honestly, one scene where I knew that they weren't going to do that with her was that very beginning scene with all of the sisters leaning up against the door, spying on their mother and father, having a conversation about Mr. Bingley. And Lydia and Kitty are the ones being like up against the door, and Elizabeth's like, don't do that, until they're like, he has 5,000 pounds, and then she's like, wait, what? And she puts her up against the door. So it's, yeah, she gets along with her. It's fun. She supports other women even in pursuits that she doesn't necessarily have for herself. It's really good to see.
This fall, Focus Features presents the story of a modern woman who discovered the one person she cannot stand is the one man she may not be able to resist.
So I want to shift over now to starting to sort of close this out here. And so I want to pose the question to each of you, even though I have a feeling what the answer is going to be. Would you recommend this movie to other people? And let's start with Liz. Would you recommend this movie to other folks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think because I talk to a lot of people who like very specific niche kinds of movies, it's definitely not a movie I would recommend to absolutely everyone. But I would absolutely recommend this movie to most of my friends, my family, all the film bros in my life need to watch this movie just to get exposed to new media. But it's good. It's just a good movie. At the end of the day, whether you like romance, whether you don't, it's quality content, and I think it's worth the 2-hour watch.
Real. Andromeda, what about you?
I would recommend this movie. I think we discussed all the good points I want to say as to why in this episode, but I would definitely recommend it.
Nice. And then, Alexandra, what about you?
And yes, I would definitely recommend this. I mean, it really is like the quintessential rom-com. It's very easy for people who maybe aren't necessarily into it to get into it and watch it. Y'all said, even if they're not into the romance, there's plenty of other things to like about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to have a round out this pretty much unanimous opinion, I would absolutely recommend this movie to folks because it is, I don't know, it's quintessentially fuzzy, and it's sweet. It's aspects of it feel really sort of universal to me, and I think it's just warm. There's just sort of a warm feeling that makes me want to like watch this movie. Like I don't know. It makes I want to watch this movie like on a Saturday night with like a blanket and like a cup of cocoa or something, and the lights, and just like as like the lights going down, or like on a stormy day or something. And yeah, there's just something incredibly homey about this movie. I could see this. I so completely understand why this is like a comfort movie for so many people, because it's incredibly comforting.
You have bewitched me, body and soul.
I thought you didn't like him. So did I. So did we all.
Pride and Prejudice.
Well, I think that's going to round out our primary initial discussion. I want to thank all of my panelists for being here today. Thank you very much. And I hope to see all of our wonderful listeners in the next one. Bye-bye.